live tonight. This is Real Sex Phoenix. Are you guys excited to talk about some sex tonight?
Yeah!
I know that's right. I know that's right. So who here is familiar with the HBO series Real Sex back in the day?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are showing your age. That's good times. Good times. Well, that was a very, very awesome show that came out on HBO. I know it was the first time that I saw a penis on stage, saw some titties on stage. We are adults here, guys, so we can say titty, we can say penis, we can say dick. So it's a fun night tonight, guys. I want you guys to relax. My job today is to give you guys permission to be vulnerable tonight, okay? This is a safe space to talk about sex. I have 6 wonderful people who are gonna come up on the stage tonight, and they represent all dynamics of sexuality and people here in our local community here. So they have very dynamic backgrounds, very amazing histories, and they're gonna share with you. We have some amazing topics to talk about. There's gonna be a time where we get to talk to you guys, and we really want you to be open and honest. There's no dumb questions, there's no stupid questions, there's no wrong answers to anything tonight, okay? If something is on your mind and you want to talk about it, let's talk about it, because that's what tonight's all about. It's all about engaging in uplifting conversation about sexuality. A couple questions for you guys. What is the risk of stigma in our world? What happens when we have stigma in our world?
Tell us.
Tell us? Okay, awesome. Well, stigma, okay? So we hear about this all the time, where you have like these people who are anti-gay, right? They're anti-gay, they make these laws about homosexuality, then they end up on Grindr, right? They get found out on Grindr. Well, I mean, it's funny to laugh about, but the reality is that these people are suffering as well, and they're staying in the closet, and they're living unbearable lives because of stigma. So tonight is all about breaking down labels, removing stigma, and really having deep conversations about what it means to be sexual and to understand your sexual identity in 2019. All right? So you guys ready to meet you guys panelists tonight?
Yeah!
All right, let's go ahead and meet our panelists. Our panelists tonight are 6 wonderful people. Let me make sure I get their names right. I got Miss Divine. Come on to the stage, Miss Divine. I got Devin. I got Brandy, William, Tuesday, and Calvin. Come on up, guys. Come on up. Come on up. There you go. Get over there. You want to take your seat right here. This is for Divine. There you go. Very good. We got some divas up here. They're like, I don't look good on this couch.
Where's William? Did he run?
Where is William?
William ran already?
William ran. We lost a panelist. No, he was getting a drink. He's coming up here now. That's amazing. Typical William. Typical William. All right, well, we're gonna jump right into our panel here. So what we're gonna do right here is we're gonna start to the left over here. We're gonna give our panelists an opportunity to kind of introduce themselves. Very good, Tuesday. Yeah, let's turn our cell phones off, guys. Let me do that so we don't get any phone calls while people are talking about their stuff.
Kelvin.
Yes.
If you can scoot your chair up a little bit so you don't have the imprint of the video on your head.
I'm in love with you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Give it up for Andrea, ladies and gentlemen. She's a local celebrity here as well, and so she knows the deal. All right, very good. Tuesday, go ahead.
I do have my Grindr alerts on loud though, so I'm just gonna leave it. My name is Tuesday. I am a 3rd generation Phoenician and 2nd generation Sun Devil. Woo woo. I identify as a gender fluid pansexual. My gender and sexuality tend to fluctuate somewhere in between 6 months and a year. It'll change at any given time. I also identify as Jewish, a socialist Democrat, and a sufferer of general anxiety disorder. For all those other sufferers. My background is I am a child of a high SES 2-parent college-educated household. I actually never heard my parents raise a voice at one another, so that might give a different perspective for the panel. And I also have a movie review podcast called Whiskey and Popcorn.
Give it up for Tuesday. Thank you, Tuesday. Brandon. Look at exact. Let's go over to Calvin. I want to give a big special shout out to Calvin, because we had our one panelist, Enzo, who didn't come, and he came last minute. So I want to give a special big thank you to Calvin right here. So
Name's Calvin with a C, not a K.
Hello.
I am the third oldest of 12 children.
Wow.
I am a, I guess, white, straight male who has lived in Phoenix for 5 years now. I work at a bank. You know, kind of like atypical, like white dude, straight guy, I guess. I don't know.
Thank you, Calvin. Thank you, Calvin. All right, Brandy.
Oh, it's me now.
Hi, Brandy. I'm rounding up to 38, almost 38. I am female. I identify as she, her, they, them. I am pansexual, and I discovered this pretty recently, like in the past couple of years. I was very confused by my sexuality probably my whole life, just oblivious to the fact that I was always attracted to women, but just didn't realize it. So it's been nice to discover that, but also really hard to date women because, like, where are you? So I keep dating men, but I don't want to.
Struggle is real, girl.
Seriously, God. Get it together on your profiles too, women. Jesus fuck. Anyway, so sorry. I'm also sober. 4 years tomorrow, actually.
Yeah.
Give it up. Sobriety, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up.
Yeah. Also, really hard to date. So I'm really winning at life over here. That's about it.
I'm in love with you. Thank you so much. We got William here. Your mic should be under you.
Sitting on.
You didn't even notice.
Feel it.
Farts.
My name is William, and I'm a mess. I'm 28, cisgender, gay, always been gay. I told my mom I was gay by demanding a C-section.
Are you a diva?
I have a dog. He has 3 legs. I'm obsessed with him. 3-legged rocket on Instagram. Be sure to follow him. That's the only thing that matters in life is my dog and myself.
All right, thank you, William. You got Devin.
Hello, my name's Devin. I'm 25. I'm not an alcoholic. I am a gay black man. I am a multidisciplinary artist and a native Phoenician, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much. It's Divine.
Hello, I'm Divine. I am some years old, and so I identify as just gay. Like, I was born gay, I am gay, and that's it. So, and I guess the pronouns, when I speak to the gods, like right now,
Yeah.
you know, hey girl, she, her, hey bitch, and yes queen, and you know, so catch me on YouTube, Sippin' Shade. Thank you.
It's a great channel she just started too, so love it. And once again, I'm Special K, aka Kelvin Harper, and I am a cis gay male. All right, so I've always been gay, and I like boys. Tadra Call says that very, very well. All right,
Men that are of age, right?
Oh yes, men. Sorry, men.
Yes.
Thank you, Brandy, for that clarification.
Clarifying.
All right, moving right along, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so we're gonna jump right into it, guys. We're gonna talk about sexual gender and identity. So we kind of all discussed who we are, but let's kind of get right into it. Let's talk about gender in itself. How many genders are there? Let's talk about gender. Who wants to take it on?
Well, I mean, I think there's an infinite amount of genders. I mean, however you want to define your gender is how you are defined, you know? Okay. And I think about how people will not change pronouns for other people, or they think it's dumb calling someone them instead of he or him or she or like whatever. But people change their names all the fucking time, especially women change their last names when they get married, and nobody has a problem with calling women like by a different last name, but you just do it. You do it because that's what they're called. So call someone by the gender that they want to be called. Absolutely. However they define themselves.
So what about, so there's been debate about this and how I've seen people speak on, there's only two genders when you're born, and there's non-monogamous, which is intersex. What would you guys say to those people that say that there's only two genders?
That the binary is very limiting, and that there are people that exist outside of that who need space. I personally identify as a man, but I consider myself pretty fluid in my expression. I've done drag a few times, but there's something to be said about existing outside of a box that's either or.
I mean, I feel like that's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit confusing, because like when it comes to intersex, which is such a small minority, I feel like wanting to classify them as a different gender is almost offensive to them, because most people in life, all you want to do is fit in. And if you were born intersex, but you're mostly female, and you want to say, no, you're not a female, you're intersex, I feel like that's in a way putting them down. I always wonder now how we put them in the LGBTQIA plus category, and like, do intersex people even want to be part of that? Because we're basically telling them you're not normal. And then I think of myself growing up, like I've always been attracted to like girlier things. I played with Legos and G.I. Joes, but I also like to play with Barbies, and I've worn girl clothes, I've worn boy clothes, but I don't ever feel like I was becoming a different gender. I was just a guy that wanted to put on some girl pants because my butt looked good. Like, I wasn't a new gender. I was a man wearing girl pants, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think we have to create something new. I think transgender is a whole nother thing. And what I think the disconnect is with being transgender is people never want to talk about the transgender itself isn't a diagnosis. Gender dysphoria is the mental diagnosis, and people don't ever talk about gender dysphoria, which is why I think people are so discriminatory against transgender, is because they don't ever talk about the actual mental diagnosis behind it. Being a transgender is it's a treatment for gender dysphoria, and nobody talks about that. But as far as like being like non-binary, and I mean, I guess in a way you could say I'm non-binary, but I never felt like I was that. I was just like a guy, and I like what I like.
Well, and can we be very careful about terminology when we're talking about this, because sex and gender are extremely different concepts. Sex is very much biological, and even within the concept of sex, like we were talking about, there is vast differences where women are born with testes, vice versa. There is a lot of biological inconsistencies within that, and gender is nothing but a learned social norm that we have under our culture. That doesn't matter if that's European culture, Australian culture, US culture, but that is a learned concept where we grow up and our dad throws a Barbie at his son and says, you will never play with this doll. That is a learned concept, and sex is not a learned concept. That is biological. So we can't talk about people who identify as two genders or talk about someone who identifies as two sexes, because those are two very different concepts.
So is that gender or gender norm, like gender roles? Gender roles are learned, or actual gender?
The entire concept of gender is only socially learned as a norm or a moire of what we learn as a culture. Sex is biological. So if people were doing it legit, sorry heteros, you'd be doing a sex reveal party, because you haven't asked that child what they identify as.
Right.
Yep. Sorry.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Very good. All right. So speaking about defining who you are and the sex reveals parties, for kids, when is it the appropriate time to discover their gender? Mario Lopez is in the news right now for saying that. Hey, we're going to talk about it. Mario Lopez is in the news right now for saying that parents shouldn't. What exactly did he say? He said parents shouldn't be encouraging kids to define their genders. What are your thoughts about that?
I've reviewed studies where children so young that they don't identify as a gender yet have wanted to cut off parts of their body. So I'm gonna say whenever that onsets, it's probably time for a therapist and to start supporting them in whatever they're going to do. And to even think about that. They don't understand it, but they start at a very young age, usually in a bathroom situation, saying, "Mommy, I'm wrong." Like, that's a real thing that we have to talk about, and it's backed in scientific studies where they don't even understand yet, and it's not even things where like the parents start to see like, oh, our son really likes pink, like that's, you know, like not even like telltale signs that they say, but I mean, children that very, very early don't even have a concept of social gender and find themselves wrong.
So here for somebody else, what does that conversation look like for a parent who is coming face to face with that? There's a child in the bathroom saying, "Mommy, I'm wrong." Like, how do we have that conversation? And we can hear from you again Tuesday if you need to. But I'd like to hear from somebody else.
I'd actually like to talk if that's okay.
Okay, sure. Let's jump right
I'll sit
into
up
it.
here. Okay, so I was at a New Year's party. John was at with me, and there was a transgendered woman, and I heard her over speaking that if a child starts to do anything, you shouldn't like really just don't interfere. Don't like say like, "Oh, this is wrong," by any means. You know, like just kind of let them like live and let do it. Yeah, like you can like even encourage them a little, but just don't like impose on them.
That's wonderful.
I agree with that. Like, why
That's
put
awesome.
stress on them?
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Give it up. What's your name, my friend?
Karen.
Give it up for Karen, ladies and gentlemen. Very bold, very bold. I love it. Awesome. Wonderful. So encourage our kids to be themselves. I think that's fantastic. So we touched base on pronouns. We touched base on appropriate age. Let's talk about the Kinsey scale. So the Kinsey scale is something that was brought up, and that is the who wants to take the lead on that? Let's go ahead and do that.
Well, supposedly, according to science, the Kinsey scale reflects several stages that sexuality can be expressed at. And you know, there's extremes where someone is a homosexual, and then the other extreme being someone that is a heterosexual. But in between those two extremes are many different levels and many different configurations wherein people might find attraction towards the same sex, or maybe only find attraction towards the same sex in certain configurations or situations. And I'm the one that brought this question up. Like, I, as a gay man, wonder, like, do straight people also find themselves attracted to something supposedly that is wrong by way of our society and our culture?
When you say
At
by wrong,
times,
what do you
yes.
mean by wrong?
Well, let's hear from Calvin on that.
So in terms of like the Kinsey scale, that's something that's fascinated me. I've always thought, and I think it speaks even to the previous like topic in terms of the fluidity of what we define ourselves as in a cultural state, because there is a certain type of objectification that comes with what we not just see ourselves as, but then what we want others to perceive us as in that state. And so I think that both internally and externally, you will project a certain personality of what you want to be perceived as by people, but then also at the same time, like that's something that every individual might wrestle with. So.
Have you ever had a sexual fantasy about the same sex?
We're getting real here.
It's called real sex. This is called real sex, people. And listen, guys, it's a safe space
So
to
I
vulnerable.
wouldn't say a sexual fantasy, no. A sexual curiosity, absolutely. Like so I'm 31, when I was 22, I was, like growing up, I was in like a Christian home, like went to church, volunteered at church, all that. But one of my best friends, his name's Jared Holmes, lives in Michigan, that's where I'm from, was gay. And I was just like, I don't understand like how, for the majority of my life, I was told that this was like sinful and hateful and you're going to hell and you're a terrible person and all the cliches of hate, essentially. And so for me, I was like, all I see is a person. And so how do I know for myself, like that I define myself as straight, or is that just something that I was told growing up? So like when I was 22, I actually went on a few dates with men to pique that curiosity of like, hey, is this something that I'm willing to explore? And I will say, as a young 22 man exploring it, you attract a certain level of older gentleman.
Ain't that the truth, honey?
I can buy you things, put you in an apartment, blah, 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 blah. Like, you're very handsome. But through that, not once was there like an inkling of like, oh, this excites me, other than outside of recognizing that I do like attention. Like, the attention is nice, but like the sexual draw was not there. And so in terms of like my gender and how I would draw to that, it was more of a thank you, but I'm not interested.
Can we give it up for sexual like exploration? That sounds amazing. William, you have something to say?
So, with this whole scale thing, this is the first time I've heard this term, but does this apply to mostly cis straight men? Because I feel like a girl can go to the club and make out with a girl and it's nothing, they're still a straight woman. But every time like there's a gay guy that does, or a straight guy, I'm sorry, that does anything remotely gay, it's like, oh, he's gay. Like I mean, I know plenty of straight men, and if they do anything with me, it's like, oh, well, they're gay, they're not straight. I'm like, okay, like people won't even let them be bi, they have to be gay. But like women can, I mean, a woman can like marry a woman and then divorce them and marry a guy, and they're considered straight. But I feel like this whole scale thing
Also
mostly applies to men, straight men.
I mean, so like, as a gay man, I have only had sex with men, but in more recent years I've sort of started getting into kink. It's not something that I'm like very active in, but in the limited experiences that I have had, they were bondage related, and every single time it was a woman dominating me. And that, like, I can say as a gay man, that kind of applies to me, and that, like, while I won't have penetrative or like mostly contact sex with women, if it's in that context, I'm totally comfortable, totally turned on, totally okay with being the sub.
And yes, Kinsey was, I believe, 50s or 60s. So that was very much like, and it's not as extreme as you guys think it. So like Kinsey, a 6 on the scale is like extreme hetero masculinity. But you worked at the YMCA and you checked out the guy next to you and he was naked, tick. You know, like, oh, you saw this porn mag behind the guy at the gas station and you were like, he's got a nice dick, tick. I mean, like, it's very, like, it's much more fluid than you think it is. But yes, very 50s, 60s. I still truly believe in the Kinsey scale, but that's because I think we're so much more in the gray concept of it. But yes, very like 50s, 60s. So it was very lesbian, like straight, gay, back and forth.
What's interesting is that, go ahead, yes.
Yeah. So to add to it, I believe you're talking about the bisexual option, which is the published book of the research.
Yeah.
So the scale is 2 parts. One is your emotional scale, the other is your sexual scale. And it's your and it's related to gender, because at that time it was still very binary. So on the emotional scale, you might have more resonance with a man or a woman, and on the sexual scale, you might have more resonance with a man or a woman. And it is independent of your own gender. We all have our own place on those scales, right? And then I think the other thing to unpack in what you're talking about, and sometimes it's okay for women and it's not okay for men, that has to go with deep ingrained ideas about what's okay for men and what's okay for women.
So, thank you so much. What's your name, hon?
My name's Rachel.
Give it up for Rachel, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. All right, so one thing I'll kind of just add for myself and be vulnerable here is that, like, you know, and Brandy, you kind of touched base on this, is that as you get older, you just kind of recently became pansexual. You know, I'm 37 years old, and I've never been with a woman in my life, but ever. But the thing about it is that as I've gotten older, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I'm like, you know, we're going to talk about porn a little bit later here, but I watch straight porn, and I love watching straight porn, and sometimes well, the thing about it is that it's kind of switched now to where it's like I kind of like what's happening to the woman, and I kind of want to do that myself.
The
So
dicks
we'll
are
touch.
better in the straight porn.
Yeah, hello. That's true. That's
They totally are. I've noticed that I've talked about that. They're
way bigger. Well, it's because stuff being injected in them. But very good discussion, guys. Very good discussion. All right, so let's get this kind of moving on. Let's move into sexual experiences, guys. So let's jump right into masturbation. Speaking of masturbation, Who masturbates here? Raise a hand. Who masturbates? Everybody's got to raise their damn hand now. Come on.
Not everybody.
Not everybody. Very good. Very good.
I mean, as you know, I never masturbated, like, until I was, like, 35. Like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
One night I fell asleep with a vibrator in my vagina because I was bored. That's real. Because I didn't know how to, like, pleasure myself at all, and I never really tried. I was just like, whatever.
So why do you feel like so let's say we're getting
I love you, Brandy.
You're welcome.
She's real, baby.
That's all right. I know.
So it seems like there seems to be a difference. So why would someone not masturbate? Like what kept you from masturbating?
I just thought like I thought I couldn't orgasm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did anybody ever not masturbate because they thought that it was wrong or it was like sinful? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Oh, I guess that's my turn to talk. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, it's in terms of like conservative culture, it's definitely something that is like exploring your own sexuality, something to